All right, you beautiful humans, let's unpack this conversation, not from a place of pure rumor and speculation, because I know that many of you are waiting and some of you are actually waiting in desperate need of an upgrade. And these rumors are only adding that fuel to the fire. But actually, let's really talk about the why. So when it comes to the rumors of the M1X and M2, these devices could show up when Apple feels like releasing them because Tim Cook and the gang do not care about John Prosser's eyebrows. And I know that quoting headlines is easy, but when you dive into researching logistics, following the emotional roller coaster of the stock market, the consumer market, because really there is enough speculation to drive all of these markets. But along with those stories about the exclusivity of supply chains and who's going to outbid the other brands when it comes to manufacturing, then you'll realize it does come down to Apple making a move as to when they can actually get these into your hands, these new devices that is, and not actually having these continued delays as they have with each new launch this past year. And of course, their pipeline is full and they still have demand for what is currently available. And really sitting on a mountain of cash that they have, streamlining their manufacturing, along with an unwavering desire to have some of that Apple Kool-Aid, they are smart at navigating the market because everyone in tech on some level has had to deal with shortages and manufacturing delays. So it's not as if they're actually getting left behind with the rest because they're the ones with the massive buying power. Now, we of course don't need to spend a lot of time here on what the M1 has done to this space. It's not just Apple, but other brands that are competing here. But this is why we need the M1X and or the M2 to get here as soon as possible, because this is relevant whether you want a Mac or you still prefer a Windows PC, because this is actually about adding more momentum behind the advancement of these chips and getting more access to that creative work, the development, and the gaming, as well as those that are looking for that entry-level device that are on a budget. Although I think the next iteration, which I've often talked about, won't really be considered budget, but it will be, they'll actually have some spin-offs of other very capable options, which we do have right now. And of course, I also want to reiterate that the comparisons can definitely steal the joy out of what you currently have. So let's actually collectively embrace the fact that whether you're a user of Apple products or not, the hype and all of the Apple's magic in their charts, when these M1X and M2s land is when we will actually continue to drive this market forward. Not that the market is necessarily stagnant, although it seems like in the tech community, especially on YouTube, there is a lot of drought when it comes to tech news. And I had mentioned previously that Qualcomm is looking to get into the space and bring an Apple Silicon competitor to the market. And this is which we should be celebrating this. We should be excited by this because according to this source, Qualcomm acquired Nuvia this year. And what we do know is that the founders, based on the sources that is that it seems that they left Apple on not so warm and fuzzy terms and wanted to really develop a competitor for Intel and AMD. And whether these founders actually left Apple with proprietary information to compete, and whether you believe Apple is actually truly innovating here or just building on an already established concept, it is because of the recent events of what Apple is bringing to the market, and more consumers and prosumers are either trying these latest releases for the first time ever and doing so in a much larger capacity than I can ever remember since following tech over these years, but they're also coming back to the hardware after previously being frustrated by it. But with the competitors out there focusing more on battery life with the ultra portables, as well as the port options and the ability to upgrade the RAM even after purchase, because you can't ever do that on Apple, and I don't think you ever will. And this is actually still going to be heavily influencing those buying decisions. However, if these M1X machines are bringing back those ports, the battery life would likely remain competitive, if not be even better. And of course, the lack of ports and the RAM options on the current M1s adding pause for right now. It does sound like this added I/O coming back to us is going to likely reduce that barrier. And so now it actually comes down to the RAM. So will this speculation of the M1X being limited to 32 gigabytes of RAM be the holdout, even with the possible 12-core CPU and 16-core GPU in these mobile devices? Because what it really does come down to, and we know that we have high bandwidth and low latency unified RAM in these machines, which will likely continue to improve in these updated releases. And to add to this, even Razer, who I've actually been looking into to acquire some hardware, has decided to have fixed RAM in their latest 14-inch gaming laptop, which I do know that the 15 and 17-inch options do have that upgradability after that purchase. But it's just interesting in a gaming laptop, and I've been spending some time in the community, that people are pretty upset about that. But I do think what we can expect here, barring any compatibility arguments as more developers are paying attention to Apple Silicon, is that will 16 gigs or 32 gigs look what that will actually look like in these updated MacBooks? And would 64 gigs just have such a gap when it comes to that law of diminishing returns, whether you think Apple is actually doing you a favor or ruining the fun by limiting you to 32 gigs, if that's actually the case? It'll be easy to complain until we actually see the synthetic benchmarks along with the more important real-world data, because then really what it'll come down to is that your YouTube feed will just be full of videos about how we can't even come close to touching the available resource of 64 gigs of RAM. Now, of course, I can only speak to what I've been able to do with 16 gigs of RAM and can't even imagine wanting or even needing 64, but we'll all hopefully find this out in the coming months. So to bring all of this hot mess to a close, whether you're a fan of Apple and appreciate the walled garden, with those walls seemingly closing in even more as Apple wants more hardware in-house, resulting in more control, or if an Apple device is really not your tool of choice or need, I am still rooting for Apple here, because when you piss enough people off by those Kool-Aid stands popping up on every corner, there are some really thirsty people on the other side of the street that are also hungry enough to keep things competitive. So here's to the M1X and the M2, and even more so, here's to competition bringing more choice with less compromise. You know I'm gonna say it, you keep rocking those faces, catch me here or over there on Twitter, and I'll catch you right back here on the next one. Yeah, I wasn't really planning on doing a video like this, you know, the whole thing with the rumor stuff, but man, I am in the middle of testing so many things right now, and I'm getting hung up the way that I test certain hardware, because I've got beta versions running all over the place. I mean, I've got a beta version on my M1 iPad Pro, and then of course, developer's beta on that Mac Mini, issues with my plugins, and then I'm actually running Windows 11 through Parallels on that thing, and then I'm actually running some beta stuff on the PC build that we did. So I don't know, I figured I just wanted to hang out with you. So whether you're still here, I appreciate it. So go do those things.